I paid my sister's bills for 9 years, cut her off after Christmas, then someone in uniform handed me a notice. Hi, I'm Connor. I'm 37, and 5 days ago, someone in uniform showed up at my door with a clipboard, a printed notice, and a look that said this was only the beginning. Let's rewind. The moment I pulled my kids out of my parents' house on Christmas, I knew something irreversible had happened, but I didn't flinch. Not when Jacob asked why his cousin got a drone and he got a book about Saturn's rings. Not when Emma traced the glitter on her cousin's new tablet like it was a stained glass window in a church. Not even when my mom whispered, "Your kids don't need all that," with that familiar tilt of superiority that always made me feel like a guest at someone else's life. That night, I logged into every account I'd created, co-signed, or funded in some quiet, backdoor way to keep Amanda's world spinning, and I ended it all. I wasn't angry. Not really. I felt like an accountant closing the books, precise, focused, cold maybe, but finally free. The next morning, my phone had 58 missed calls. Amanda, my mom, Todd, though I could only tell it was him because he kept texting in all caps like he was trying to summon a demon. But I ignored it all, until the knock came. The woman at the door wore a utility vest, had a clipped voice, and held a payment demand for $4,673. Power shut off at Amanda's place 3 days ago. My name was still listed as the responsible party. Of course it was. I told her no. I told her it wasn't my problem anymore. She handed me the paper anyway and walked off. 5 minutes later, Amanda texted, "What did you do?" I replied, "I stopped." Then I blocked her. Sarah found me sitting at the kitchen table with the lights off, not because I was sad, but because I finally didn't owe anyone light they didn't pay for. By the 3rd day, they were desperate. Amanda used a different number every hour. First, a sobbing voicemail, then a furious text, then a screenshot of her kids sitting on the couch in coats, flashlight beams bouncing off the walls like we were in the 1800s. "They're cold, Connor. What kind of uncle does this?" I didn't answer, because the kind of uncle who paid for those coats, the heating, and the flashlight batteries for 9 straight years without a thank you is the kind who finally says, "Enough." Todd didn't bother with guilt. He went straight to threats, said I'd ruined his credit, his family, his reputation. I laughed. The only thing I ruined was their illusion of control. Then the messages changed. My mother called. "Connor, please. Amanda says you've gone off the deep end. She's scared. The kids." I cut her off. "Are your kids more important than mine?" She paused. Not because she was thinking, because she'd never had to think about it before. That silence told me everything. She tried softening. "You've always been so generous. This isn't you." But that's the thing. It was me, for too long, and that version of me was dead. The next day, my dad finally called. His voice was clipped, impatient. "You made your point. Now fix it." That was it. No, "How are the kids?" No, "We're sorry." Just fix it. I didn't even answer. I just clicked end and added his number to the list. Then came the letter. Not a text, not a call. A formal envelope in the mailbox with a return address from the mortgage lender. Amanda's house was officially in pre-foreclosure. Missed payment. Overdue balance. The clock had started. Sarah read it over my shoulder and said quietly, "They'll have to move." I nodded. She asked, "How do you feel?" I thought about it. About Amanda's kids being pulled from private school. About Todd losing his truck. About my parents realizing they'd thrown their loyalty behind a black hole that only consumed and never gave. I thought about Emma's glitterless craft kit, Jacob's fake smile over his used book, and the Christmas photo Amanda posted of her kids opening $1,000 gifts, paid for by me. Then I said, I feel like gravity finally let go. The collapse hit faster than I expected. 1 week after I shut the pipeline off, Amanda's house was posted on Zillow. Not for sale, but as a foreclosure listing. The bank moved quick. I'd paid for 6 years straight, never missed a payment, never been late. Of course, they noticed when it stopped. Stability doesn't vanish quietly. That same day, Todd's truck was repoed in front of a Walgreens. And then the schools called.
private tuition hadn't been paid in 2 months. I hadn't even realized I'd been covering that too, until they lost their enrollment slots and Amanda blew up my inbox with 10 paragraphs of rage. "You humiliated us. The kids are traumatized. You're tearing this family apart." I didn't reply, but I saved the message. I'd been documenting everything. A few hours later, I got the call I didn't expect, from Amanda's oldest. "Uncle Connor, is everything okay? Mom and Dad are really mad at you. Grandma said you're being selfish." The words hit hard, not because I cared what Amanda or my mom said, but because this kid, this 11-year-old boy who'd called me when his bike chain broke, who I'd bought birthday presents for every year, was now repeating someone else's script. I didn't argue with him. I just said, "Hey buddy, I love you, and none of this is your fault." He didn't know what to say to that, so we sat in silence for a moment, and then he hung up. That night, I went for a walk while Sarah put the kids to bed. I didn't need air. I needed distance from the house, from the chaos, from the part of me still grieving the idea that family meant anything if it was built on imbalance. When I came back, Sarah was waiting at the kitchen table, laptop open. "You need to see this." Amanda had posted on Facebook a long, dramatic essay filled with half-truths and omissions. No names, of course, but it was clear who she meant. She talked about betrayal, about family turning their backs in a time of need, about how some people cared more about money than love. The comments poured in. "You don't deserve this. Who would do that to their own sister? Some people forget where they come from." Sarah scrolled silently. Then she looked up. "Do you want to respond?" I shook my head. No, let her spin her story. The truth doesn't need PR. She nodded. But in that moment, I realized something. Amanda wasn't spiraling. She was recruiting. This wasn't over. 3 days after Amanda's Facebook pity parade, I found out she'd contacted HR at my job. Not directly, she wasn't that bold. She emailed the anonymous ethics line, claiming I was funneling company money for personal vendettas and suggesting they review my expense reports. It was clumsy and laughably false, but HR still had to call me in. I sat across from 2 people I barely knew, one reading from a printed sheet, the other quietly watching my face for cracks. "It's probably nothing," the first one said, "but we're obligated to ask. There's been an anonymous concern about misuse of funds, something about wire transfers, retaliation, a mortgage." I actually laughed, out loud. Then I opened my briefcase, pulled out a manila folder, and slid it across the table. "Here's a copy of my personal bank records, labeled and categorized. None of it involves company funds. The mortgage they're referring to is my sister's, which I've paid for 6 years, privately. Quietly, without thanks. I stopped paying. This is fallout." They flipped through the folder, stunned. "You documented all of this?" "I lived all of this." By the time I got home that night, my phone was full again. Missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize, a message from my old high school friend Dan asking, "Hey man, is everything okay with your family? Amanda posted something pretty intense." And then, finally, the email. Amanda sent it from her old college account, like she thought I wouldn't recognize it. The subject line said, "You win," but the body of the email was anything but surrender. "You made your point, Connor. You embarrassed us. You ruined our lives. The kids cry every night. Todd can't find work. You've made sure no one will help us. Congratulations. I hope it was worth it." And then, tacked on like a receipt, "Mom says she doesn't know who you are anymore." I stared at those last words for a long time, because they were meant to hurt, and they didn't. I clicked forward, sent the email to Sarah without comment. 10 minutes later, she walked into the office with a plate of leftover lasagna and zero sympathy. "You know what the last line really means?" she said, setting the plate down. "It means you finally became someone who stops being used.
That's what she doesn't recognize. I picked up my fork. Good. Let her keep not recognizing me. It took my father 2 weeks to weigh in. Not with a call, that would have required effort. No, he sent a letter, a real one, mailed, in a white envelope with that tight, stiff handwriting he used for tax forms and birthday cards he didn't want to write. Sarah found it in the mailbox and handed it to me like it was ticking. "You don't have to read it." "Oh, I'm reading it," I said, already opening it. It was 3 pages, typed, double-spaced, like he thought he was submitting a sermon or a court deposition. The first paragraph was a lecture on family unity. The second accused me of causing irreparable emotional harm. Then he slid into a list of all the ways Amanda and Todd are suffering, as if I hadn't lived through a decade of their crises on repeat. But the third page, that's where he got honest, angry. "You've embarrassed this family. People are talking. Your sister is devastated. Your mother is sick with worry. You've always been the quiet one, Connor, the one we could count on to keep things stable. What changed?" I stared at that line for a while. The quiet one, the one we could count on. That was their whole blueprint, wasn't it? Build the house on my back, call it stability, and get mad when I stop being the foundation. Sarah read it over my shoulder. "Want me to burn it?" I said, "Frame it. Label it Exhibit A in the case of why I left the group chat." She laughed, but something in my chest ached. Not regret, just grief. Grief for the version of me who kept mistaking silence for strength. Grief for every holiday I paid for their joy and called it generosity. Grief for the years I traded away pieces of my future to prop up people who only noticed me when the money stopped coming. That weekend, we took Jacob and Emma to the lake. No screens, no phones, no awkward dinners with tension hidden under gravy. Just us. Jacob found a frog. Emma insisted it needed a name. We settled on Sir Bounce-A-Lot. While Sarah read on a blanket, I watched my kids chase dragonflies, free and unburdened. Not worried about power bills, not comparing gifts, not carrying someone else's expectations in their little hands. This, I thought, is family. Not obligation, not guilt, just love with no invoice attached. A month passed. Amanda stopped trying to contact me directly, but her echo never left the room. Mutual friends reached out under the guise of just checking in. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years DM'd me. "Hey man, I know things are tense right now, but she's your sister. Blood is blood." I didn't answer, because I'm done with blood as currency. Done with the kind of math where DNA is used to excuse theft disguised as loyalty. But the real twist came in February, when I got a message from a lawyer. A real one. Apparently, Amanda and Todd had tried to file a civil claim for financial abandonment of dependent family. That was almost funny. Almost. They'd cobbled together a case based on the idea that I'd created a pattern of financial support that constituted an informal agreement, and that by ending it, I had left them destitute. I forwarded the email to my own lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Carla who had dealt with enough family messes to need no explanation.
After 5 minutes reviewing my documentation, the spreadsheets, the emails, the 9 years of receipts, she looked up at me and said, "I hope they try this in court. I really, really do. Turns out you can't build a legal case on someone's past generosity unless you can prove coercion, intent, or contractual obligation. And guess what? Amanda had none of those. What she had was entitlement dressed up as victimhood. Carla drafted a cease and desist so clean it could have been framed as a piece of modern art. We sent it. The claim disappeared in 2 days. But the attempt stayed with me. They really believed I owed them, not just emotionally, legally, like my bank account was their inheritance, like my boundaries were a betrayal. That weekend, I took the kids to the hardware store, not for anything urgent, just to pick out paint samples for their bedrooms. A small thing, but a reminder that my money was finally going toward my home. Jacob chose a deep navy blue, said it looked like space. Emma chose a shade called Moonlight Petal. Don't ask, she's 6. We spent the rest of Saturday moving furniture, taping edges, and painting walls until our arms ached and our hair smelled like primer. Emma got more paint on herself than the wall. Jacob insisted on doing the ceiling. Sarah bribed them with cookies to keep going. I stood in the doorway, looking at them, all messy and loud and mine, and I felt something unexpected. Gratitude. Not for the mess, not for the chaos, but for the clarity. For the first time in nearly a decade, my life was mine again, fully, unshared, undiverted. The background hum of debt that used to buzz in my skull every time Amanda texted was gone. My money stayed in my accounts. My time stayed in my house. That night, Jacob came downstairs in his pajamas, dragging a blanket behind him. "Dad," he asked sleepily, "are we still grounded?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "Grandma said you're raising us to be grounded, that we don't need all that stuff." I sat down beside him on the couch. "Do you think we're missing out?" He was quiet. Then he shrugged. "I don't think I want a drone if it means you're mad all the time." That landed. I pulled him close, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "You'll never go without. Not ever. But from now on, what we have together. Not because we're proving something, not because someone else needs it, just because it's ours." He didn't totally understand, but he nodded anyway. And I realized then I wasn't just rebuilding my life, I was rewriting the legacy. In March, Amanda downsized again. They moved into a 2-bedroom rental on the edge of town, the kind of place with peeling paint, a shared laundry room, and a broken mailbox duct taped shut. I only knew because my mother mentioned it during one of her attempted guilt check-ins. "It's hard, Connor. They're struggling. The kids don't have space. Amanda's depressed." I didn't respond the way I used to. No soft apologies, no vague offers. Just, "That sounds like something she and Todd need to work through." My mother sighed like I was failing some invisible test. "You're better than this." "No, I'm just finally acting like it." She didn't call for a while after that. Meanwhile, my own home was getting louder, in a good way. Emma's room was now a swirl of moon-colored walls and glow-in-the-dark stars. Jacob's shelves were full of science kits and Lego planets. We hosted a movie night with their school friends and didn't think twice about the snack budget. Everything we gave them came from us, not from sacrifice, not from scraping after bailing someone else out, from real, chosen generosity. One night, Sarah and I sat in the living room while the kids were asleep upstairs. We'd opened a bottle of wine. No particular reason, just peace. She looked at me over the rim of her glass. "Do you miss them?" I thought about it. Not the people exactly, but the idea. The hope that family meant more than leverage, that if I gave enough, they'd someday say thank you.
That if I stayed quiet, I'd eventually be seen. "No," I said. "I miss believing they cared." Sarah nodded. "That's different." I leaned back in my chair. The silence, comfortable for once. But then the doorbell rang. Late, unexpected. I opened the door to find Amanda standing there. Alone. No makeup, no drama. Just a hoodie, jeans, and a face I barely recognized without the performance. She looked smaller. Not physically, just deflated. "I need to talk," she said. I didn't move. Didn't say anything. She added, quietly, "Not about money. Just talk." I stepped aside. 10 minutes, I said. She nodded and walked in. Amanda sat at the edge of the couch like she didn't recognize the room, like she'd expected a battlefield, not a home. She didn't look at the family photos on the wall, or the pile of homework Jacob left on the coffee table, or the little astronaut Emma forgot on the stairs. She looked at her hands. I waited.
She finally spoke. I didn't come to fight. I said nothing. I'm not here to ask for money, or help, or favors. Still, I said nothing. She looked up at me. I came because I think I understand now. That got my attention. Understand what? She let out a shaky breath. What it cost you. She started slow, said the house was cold all winter. The new apartment had thin walls and old plumbing. Todd couldn't hold a job. He blamed the economy, then me, then everything but himself. She said her kids asked every day why they couldn't go back to their old school, why their friends didn't come around anymore, why they weren't going to Florida for spring break this year. I told them we're making changes, she said, smiling bitterly, which is mom code for we screwed up. I watched her. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She just sat in her own silence for once. I took you for granted, she said. For years, I treated you like a resource, not a brother. And when you finally stood up for yourself, I painted you as the villain because I didn't know how to live with the version of you that kept saving me. I nodded. That version of me is gone. I know. The air between us felt heavy, but not hostile. Not anymore. Why now? I asked. Why come here? She looked down again. Because Mom and Dad won't say it. Todd definitely won't. And the kids, they're too young to understand yet. But I get it. I do. And I thought maybe you deserved to hear it from me. I'm sorry, Connor. And here's the part I didn't expect. I believed her. Not because she sounded broken, not because I wanted to fix anything, but because for the first time she was speaking without expectation. No manipulation, no leverage, just ownership. I stood and watched to the door. She followed. At the threshold, she paused. I know it doesn't fix anything. It's not supposed to, but it's a start. She nodded. Will you ever come back? To the family? I looked past her, at the quiet street, the warm windows of our house, the laughter upstairs. I never left my family. I just stopped financing yours. She winced, but she didn't argue. Good night, Amanda. She walked to her car, didn't look back. I closed the door, locked it, and turned out the porch light. Inside, Sarah was waiting at the top of the stairs. You okay? Yeah, I said. Better than I've been in years. She smiled. Come upstairs. The kids want you to do the bedtime story tonight. I nodded. I walked into Jacob's room first. He was already under the covers, holding that dog-eared book about black holes. Emma was waiting in her moon-colored room, astronaut in hand, ready for her lullaby. And I realized then, this wasn't just peace. This was freedom. The kind that doesn't ask you to explain your boundaries. The kind that doesn't call you selfish for choosing yourself. The kind that lets you love without being used. I kissed them both goodnight, turned off the lights, and crawled into bed beside Sarah. No buzzing phone, no late-night emergencies, no spreadsheets in my head.
Just the sound of my children breathing, my wife beside me. And for the first time in 9 long years, I slept like a man who was finally home.